is NBC Palm Springs. Breaking news.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sarah Sanchez. Gina Lamont has the night off. Here's a look at where the Apple fire stands at this hour. More than 27,319 acres burned. The fire 30% contained. 12 structures total have been lost, including 4 homes. Officials have lifted the Riverside County evacuation orders, but the community of Oak Glen in San Bernardino County remains under an evacuation order. Forest Falls, Pioneer Town, and Rimrock are under an evacuation warning as well. So firefighters have made some progress, but the fire is still growing. This is time-lapse video from today. Smoke pushing into the northern tier of the valley. The Apple fire is burning through thick, dry brush that hasn't burned in years. Coupled with those gusty winds, it's been an ongoing problem for firefighters, and we're going to hear from Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett about what we can expect with weather conditions as we head into the evening hours. He'll join us in just a moment. But among the evacuees over the last few days, dozens of service dogs in training from Guide Dogs of the Desert. The kennel was evacuated over the weekend because of the water fire that was in Whitewater. The dogs were placed in temporary homes. We'll bring you their story as part of our live team coverage tonight. Daytona Everett is live in Whitewater with that story, where those trainers take no chances and instead take action. We begin with Olivia Sandusky at the command post in Beaumont. Today, Congressman Roe Ruiz met with fire officials. Olivia.
Fire officials met with the congressman today. They discussed tactics with this view of the smoke and the fire just off in the hillside behind the incident command post. In that briefing, though, we were there inside the tent with them as they discussed a major issue, which is funding. They said a magnitude like this for the fire could require millions of dollars. The Apple fire was very active overnight, burning through the San Bernardino National Forest. But fire officials say they're making good progress.
Our crews are advancing significantly over the last 24 hours. We're concentrating on an area that's still pretty active, pretty hot. We want to make sure that we put out those areas completely, because there's always a possibility when you have wind that the fire, especially if you had a north wind, that the fire could burn back down into the Oak Glen area.
Oak Glen remains under a mandatory evacuation, and fire crews are carrying out a number of tactics to prevent further progression.
Concentration is still working on the eastern flank really heavily, trying to get the upper hand on it, trying to use our aircraft to put that returning line well ahead, slow it down.
The current cost of the Apple fire is $10 million, but fire officials say that potentially could grow up to $40 million. Today, Congressman Ruiz met here at the incident command post for a briefing to discuss funding.
75% of certain costs are being handled by the federal government. If the counties declare a state of emergency, then the state will declare a state of emergency if they don't have the resources or the capacity to reimburse or to deal with this fire.
Officials also say this fire comes with added expenditures, as extra sanitizing stations and tents are used to keep crews safe.
That's why I'm here, is to understand the nuances of a challenge during the pandemic, the potential threats to my constituents through the county, and already 2 or 3 steps ahead, determine where those funding sources will be.
And another issue that Congressman Ruiz discussed, the 8,000 evacuations that have happened over the last few days between the Apple fire as well as Whitewater. Our Daytona Everett spoke to a group that had to evacuate over the weekend, and she shares their story with us now. Daytona.
Olivia, it's been one thing after the next for Guide Dogs of the Desert, which is right behind me. First, it was the Apple fire like you were just talking about. They were keeping a close eye on that. And then they saw flames from the water fire coming over the hillside. That's when they knew they needed to grab the dogs and go. First, it was the Apple fire.
And so we had our eyes on that.
Then
you could see the fire on the ridge, cresting the ridge right behind the school.
The water fire.
It's pretty terrifying. Everything is dry. The winds pick up here. The winds constantly blow here. So
all week, Angela Coleman has been a watchdog for the Guide Dogs of the Desert campus.
The smoke got really bad. We couldn't breathe, so we got the dogs out to be proactive.
So we had 20 dogs on campus that we needed to place into homes. And our volunteer puppy raisers assembled at the kennel, as well as our board members and our staff, and we were able to get those dogs out just in a matter of hours.
My staff and I, we each took a couple of dogs, so I took Marion here. Attaboy. He's just been hanging out with me and my family.
Families from all over have taken in the pups for a staycation.
We had a couple puppy raisers come and be like, we're actually good, we're fine. And they're like, all right, cool, and they left.
But next week, when the smoke clears,
we don't like them to have too much downtime. We want them to be here so they can be working on their efforts to become a guide dog.
It's back to work.
Nice job.
We're, of course, in Whitewater right now, but we have a pretty good view of the apple fire and the smoke that it's sending off into what we see as Yucca Valley. Lots of residents there reporting ash and smoke, and definitely some windy conditions out here. I can barely keep my hat on. So that's why the staff members out here were saying, we don't know how fast these flames could have moved into the buildings. Luckily, no structures destroyed in the water fire. Reporting live from Whitewater, I'm Daytona Everett.
All right, thank you, Daytona. And there's a community meeting tonight for people living in and around the fire zone. It's at the Yucaipa Community Center on Oak Glen Road. That meeting is coming up in just about a half hour at 6:30. The apple fire is burning in steep and treacherous terrain. It's packed with vegetation that hasn't burned in years. And that's why much of the firefighting is being done from the air. Our Kitty Alvarado visited the Hemet Ryan Air Attack Base, where part of the air operation is being coordinated. Kitty.
Well, these firefighting pilots are tasked with doing from the sky what cannot be done from the ground. They face a lot of danger, and without their efforts, fires like the apple fire would be a lot more destructive and deadly. The apple fire burning in the mountains of Riverside and San Bernardino counties has been burning for days. It's scorched tens of thousands of acres. It's a terrain and wind-driven fire.
And it's burning in an area that hasn't burned in 100 years. So it's a lot of fuel, and it's going to be very stubborn to fight.
One of many fighting it from the air is CAL FIRE forestry fire pilot George Karcher.
Very inaccessible for the ground troops to get up there, so it's been mostly an air show.
Part of that air show is being coordinated out of Hemet Ryan Air Attack Base. It takes about 10 minutes for these firefighting aircraft to get to the apple fire. CAL FIRE engineer Fred Mata says they've been busy.
At the height of the apple fire, we had multiple aircraft, multiple air tankers flying in and out of here, pumped about 60,000 gallons of retardant a day.
It takes 3 minutes for this S2T air tanker to fill up with over 1,000 gallons of fire retardant.
We don't drop directly into flames. We want to get it out in front of it to slow down the fire.
But water must be dropped directly into the flames. Pilots have to get pretty low to make precise drops.
Sometimes when I'm dropping on fire, it gets so hot I have the windows open. I can feel the heat on my face.
But fire isn't the only danger.
But I worry about running into another aircraft. So that's my biggest fear.
Still, they don't think of the danger. They just want to help people in harm's way.
The most satisfying part is, when you can make a difference for somebody.
And as you saw there, their job is already dangerous enough. Something you can do to help: do not fly drones during an active fire. Firefighting operations have to be stopped when drones are in the airspace, and that can make firefighters lose the upper hand on the fire and also put many at risk. We're grateful for these heroes. I'm Kitty Alvarado.
All right. Thank you, Kitty. We're taking a live look now from our Agua Caliente Casino cam in Rancho Mirage. You can see all that smoke on the right-hand side of your screen. We're going to send things over to NBC Palm Springs Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett. He's got a look at the conditions for crews out there tonight. Mike.
Sarah, what you're seeing there is actually a combination of some low-level cloud cover and that smoke mixing together, and that's part of the good news as we go into our weather story tonight. We've got a trough of low pressure off towards the northwest that is going to mingle with an upper-level trough that's already in place here across Southern California. What that means is you're going to see a noticeable drop in temperatures over the next couple of days, but it also pushes some humidity onshore. Now, not the kind of humidity that we're used to here when we get some flow coming up from the south in the summertime. We got the good kind moving in. Some patchy low fog will make its way into the Inland Empire overnight tonight. It'll do that again on Thursday as well. And what that means is it raises relative humidity right at the base of that fire there and could possibly push some of that cloud cover up into the mountains there as well. It won't manifest itself as rain, but that is most certainly helpful helpful and the complete opposite of what we see when we have those offshore winds in the fall that just dry everything out. So we got that going for us. But as we've seen already tonight, we are tracking some gusty winds getting up to about 25-30 miles an hour in our more wind-prone spots, and will gust up to about 30-35 on the mountain peaks tonight. As soon as the sun goes down tonight, we will see those numbers start to drop and take us back into single digits. Let's put future winds into motion. This is 7 o'clock tonight. Everything you see here is in the teens until after about 8 o'clock tonight. This is 10 o'clock, and then we get close to midnight, and finally we'll start to see everything settling down into single digits there. We'll repeat that process again on Thursday, but about 5 miles an hour less than it was tonight. So tonight will be the gustiest night of the entire week, and then it's all downhill from here. Take a look at radar. Obviously, there's nothing going on right now. Here's our fire area. There's San Bernardino. This is the San Gorgonio Wilderness, that entire area. The fire started right about here and has been continuing to burn from the west to the east and even towards the northeast over the last couple of days here. We'll continue to do that and be whipped by those westerly and northwesterly winds overnight. No watches, no warnings in place, but we still have some air quality issues. The South Coast group actually put together this warning and put it in place earlier this week. What you're noticing here is that most of the smoke is staying off towards either the north or the eastern end of the valley here. So even though the entire valley is under that watch right now, it looks like most of that is staying off towards communities like Desert Hot Springs and Thousand Palms, where I've been getting some reports that ash is still falling out there. So if you're a sensitive breather, make sure you're taking all the necessary precautions. Neighborhood weather right now is warm still. 108 Palm Springs International. Winds coming in sustained about 13 to 15 miles an hour there. Gusts have been up to about 25-30 so far this evening, and will stay that way until around 8 p.m. Humidity sitting at about 11%. Here's the great news, though. Next 3 days, brought to you by Comfort Air, will show temperatures that will be noticeably below average. If you're not an early riser, you may want to consider becoming one on Thursday, because temperatures will touch down into the low 70s, and then tracking some slow warming as we go into the weekend. In fact, it looks like the first bit of August is going to be fairly benign. We'll take a closer look coming up.
All right, thank you, Mike. 103, we can handle that. Members of National Nurses United are holding more than 200 rallies and protests outside hospitals in at least 16 states. The nurses are demanding elected leaders and hospital employers take immediate action to save lives in the midst of a pandemic. The organization says the economic system prioritizes money over people, and they want more worker protection. And one of those rallies is happening right here in our valley. Our Regina Ureta is live now near Desert Regional Medical Center in Palm Springs with the very latest from back here at home. Regina.
Sarah, as COVID-19 patients continue to fill up hospitals all over the country, medical workers along with nurses are the ones leading the battle. But they say they're not properly being protected. That's why here in front of Desert Regional Medical Center, you're actually starting to see nurses line up here protesting their demands, which is for shortages of proper protective equipment, as well as they're also protesting their state's waiver of mandated nurse-patient ratios. We talked to a nurse here who talks about just their demands and what they're protesting here. They're basically saying that nurse-to-patient ratios reduce healthcare errors and nurse burnout, and they also save lives.
We want to come in, we want to do our job, we want to do it in the safest manner in order to take face to this pandemic. One of the issues that we're having is that we're noting that these manufacturer N95 masks are meant for a single use and they should be disposed. But many of us are wearing these masks for 12-hour shifts, and we're coming into close contact with these COVID patients.
Now, we also got a statement from the Tenet Healthcare responding to what these nurses are actually protesting out here. They are saying that they value their nurses, and they also obviously represent so they value their nurses, and they also are honored to represent what California Nurses Association is all about. They'll be out here till 8 p.m. We're going to keep you guys updated on more as more nurses come along. But right now, live in Palm Springs, Regina Ureta.
All right, thank you, Regina. Youth sports can now resume in Riverside County with safety restrictions. New guidelines are released saying youth sports can take place when 2 criteria are met. That's physical distancing of at least 6 feet and the same team participants to limit the risk of transmission. Sports that cannot be played with enough distancing are not permitted. Competitions like games and tournaments are also not allowed. Today was the first day of school for students in the Palm Springs Unified School District, but classes are virtual this year, students learning from home to kick off the new school year. These are pictures provided by the district. School officials tell us things went well. Everything is planned, although we did receive a call from one parent who says she and her children had trouble accessing the classes. We hope they got that all figured out. But it's 1 district down, 2 more districts to go as we begin the new school year. A fire of a different sort earlier today. This one, a Burtec trash truck caught on fire in Indio. This was on Indio Boulevard near Civic Center Drive. We're told the fire was sparked by a natural gas fuel leak. Let's take a look at the latest COVID-19 numbers now for Riverside County and our Coachella Valley. 490 new cases were reported today in the county, 69 of those from the Coachella Valley. We saw 14 new deaths in the county today and 5 people from the valley. One of the companies working on a coronavirus vaccine says it's on track to finish enrollment for a phase 3 study before October. Moderna says it plans to make the vaccine affordable below $40 a dose. Gilead Sciences revealed its remdesivir drug would cost more than $500 a vial for people with private health insurance. Now, without insurance, it could cost about $3,000. The CEO says they're actually saving people money because usually they would price a drug like remdesivir at about $15,000 per patient. Critics are outraged at that cost because taxpayer money paid at least $70 million for the development of remdesivir. A new study suggests minority children and those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are seeing higher rates of COVID-19. Researchers found 30% of Black children and 46% of Hispanic children tested positive for COVID-19, but roughly 7% of white children tested positive. When looking at family income, they found the infection rate was about 38% for those in the lowest bracket of income, compared to the 9% infection rate for those in the highest bracket.
Coronavirus coverage brought to you by East Valley COVID-19 testing site, serving residents of eastern Coachella Valley.
Coming up after the break, Compton officials say the sheriff's department there is acting like a gang, claiming they call themselves the executioners. We'll have a full report ahead. And President Trump continues to uphold unsubstantiated claims about mail-in voting fraud. But for some states, he says, mail-in voting is perfectly okay. We'll take a look at which states those are. And a raid on the home of a famous YouTube star. A report coming up on why a search warrant was served on his Calabasas mansion. As we head to break, we're taking a live look from our camera. This one in Rancho Mirage. We're tracking the Apple fire throughout the evening. And we'll have a live update from the command post in Beaumont in just a few minutes. You're watching NBC Palm Springs News at 6. The military finds the amphibious assault vehicle that sunk off the coast of San Diego. Now, human remains were also found. In total, 9 people are dead from the crew of 16. The crew was performing routine exercises in the amphibious vehicle when it began taking on water. Now to an investigation into the alleged sheriff's deputies gang that has branded its members the executioners. Now, city leaders in Compton are fed up with the LA Sheriff's Department, and they're calling for a federal investigation. As Greg Mills reports, the mayor of Compton herself is now speaking out.
Harrowing tales of alleged incidents. A Compton basketball coach.
I don't even know what I'm being arrested for because I fit the damn description.
Compton restaurateur.
She hopped out the car very aggressive with her gun drawn, like for no reason.
The mayor of Compton stopped here at Compton Boulevard and Wilmington Avenue.
And I asked, well, why am I being pulled over? And they said, because we believe that there are drugs in your vehicle.
Fed up, frustrated, angry. Compton leaders want the LA County Sheriff's Compton station investigated by state and federal agencies. They allege discrimination, excessive force, improper stops.
I told her she was treating me like a criminal. I didn't do anything.
They had the audacity to arrest me in front of my babies.
Compton officials also believe there is a gang element among sheriff's employees working out of here.
The known organized gang activity called the executioners that are running rampant and running the Compton Sheriff's Department.
The Sheriff's Department says, we are aware of the allegations regarding Compton Station and have launched multiple investigations. The results of the investigation will be released when legally permissible. The mayor says they pay the Sheriff's Department $22 million a year, and they want accountability.
That was Greg Mills reporting. A SWAT team and FBI investigators pay a visit to the Calabasas mansion of YouTube influencer Jake Paul. You may not know who Jake Paul is, but your kids probably do if they're under the age of 18. Well, he has about 20 million subscribers on YouTube, and he's worth about $19 million. Yeah, we're doing something wrong. The FBI says it was executing a search warrant in connection with a riot at an Arizona shopping mall in May. The LA Times reports agents seized multiple weapons from the home. The 23-year-old was charged with criminal trespass for his presence at a riot in Scottsdale. We'll be right back after the break with a look, check in with Mike with a look at our Agua Caliente casino cam. Mike, do you know who Jake Paul is?
I do, and it took everything I had not to just run away from here and go become a YouTube star, however you do that. Taking a live look from your Agua Caliente casino cam, again seeing some smoke, but some of that mixing in with some low-level cloud cover, and that's the great news. No, wait, the numbers are the great news in the forecast. I'll give you the details, and you can decide when you come back. Welcome back. Well, a scene we've become all too familiar with, the smoke off towards the north and eastern end of the Coachella Valley tonight. A new addition is some wind. We're getting some camera rock on our Walter Clark cam here along 111. Winds will gust up tonight, in case you haven't already got the memo. We'll continue to do that until around 10 p.m. tonight, and that's when we're expecting them to back off. And that's just part of our weather story. Most of it is great news. There is a low pressure system. Look, there's Alaska, there's the low, there's that counterclockwise flow, and it's the trough that's associated with it that's sagging down into Southern California here. Doesn't bring any rain in our direction. It will bring some out towards the Bay Area and just off the coast there. But what it does for us is picks up the wind. Okay, that's not great news, but it drops temperatures and raises relative humidity, and more importantly, takes that ridge of high pressure and shoves it further off towards the east there. Temperatures across North America will do something like this tomorrow: 76 in Toronto, 82 in the Big Apple, 90 and muggy in Miami. Even though Isaias has moved on, there's still a lot of rain falling there. 69 tomorrow in San Francisco, 73 in Portland, and 68 in Vancouver. Here's what we did today. 1 degree above average. 107 is the 30-year norm for this time of year. 108 is what we did, and 3 degrees below average in the overnights. That was the first thing I noticed when I stepped out this morning. It wasn't oppressively hot out there. Those numbers get even better over the next couple days. I'll show you that in a moment. Current sustained winds are coming in around 18 to 20 miles an hour. Palm Springs International, that puts the gusts around 25, 30 miles an hour. And as I mentioned tonight, and we saw earlier, it looks like it'll be around 10 o'clock. We'll finally see those numbers going back into single digits again. Winds will be up to about 25, 30 miles an hour near the fire tonight as well. More wind will be back on Thursday, but about 5 miles an hour less than we saw today. Still gusty out there, but again, not as bad as it could be. Take a look at current temperatures right now. 105 Palm Springs International. It's cool along the coast. Thick marine layers keeping them chilly. 69 in San Diego, 107 in Phoenix, 102 out towards Vegas, and 94 in Bakersfield. Closer to home, we've got a 94. It's in Desert Hot Springs, 84 in the Yucca Valley, upper 60s in Big Bear, 107 in Coachella, 99 in 29 Palms, and 78 up in Idlewild. It's going to cool very efficiently tonight. In fact, we will tuck ourselves into the low 70s once again, and look at that. Temperatures only getting into the 103 mark in Palm Springs and Thousand Palms, 104 in Indio and Palm Desert, 94 in Joshua Tree, and 70s in Big Bear. Your Comfort Air 7-day forecast shows some very comfortable temperatures Thursday and Friday, and then some slow warming as we go into the weekend. We'll cross that 110 level again, but we'll do our best to keep those overnights in the 70s.
The pandemic is now disrupting political tradition. Former VP Joe Biden announces he will not travel to Milwaukee to accept the Democratic nomination out of concern of the coronavirus. President Trump says he'll probably accept the Republican nomination from the White House. But as Caitlin Collins found out, the president is also looking far beyond conventions to the election itself, casting more doubt on mail-in voting.
3 months out from the election, President Trump is stepping up his attacks on mail-in voting amid concern from Republicans that he's discouraging his own party from casting their ballots.
It's going to be months or years. They will never be able to tabulate their votes because they're not set up for it.
Election officials in many states are now encouraging voting by mail because of the pandemic, while Trump is baselessly claiming that the virus will subside in 90 days.
But by November 3rd, that's, time-wise, that's eternity, frankly, as far as I'm concerned.
Trump's campaign and the Republican Party sued the state of Nevada today in an effort to block a new law that would send mail-in ballots to every registered voter.
So Nevada, we're in court. We'll see how it works out.
In that lawsuit, Trump and the GOP claim that the new law, which is sponsored by Democrats, would inevitably result in voter fraud. The state's Democratic governor says otherwise.
Everybody is limited to voting one time. It's totally safe.
There is at least one state where the president thinks it's okay to vote by mail, Florida, which is widely seen as critical to his re-election and is the same state where he now votes by mail.
You can't do a mail-in vote. Now, Florida is different in the sense that they've been doing it, and they've had two very good governors, frankly.
After initially planning to do so in Florida, the president now says he may accept the Republican nomination from the White House.
And we're thinking about doing it from the White House because there's no movement. It's easy.
The suggestion that he would give a major political speech from the White House has prompted even the number 2 Senate Republican to ask, is that even legal? John Thune adding, I think anything you do on federal property would seem to be problematic. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she agrees.
The state and local governments are suffering from the virus and the rest, and we're talking about whether he can have a political event at the White House. He can't.
Meanwhile, Democrats are dialing back their own convention plans after Joe Biden announced today that he'll accept his party's nomination remotely from Delaware instead of Milwaukee.
That was Caitlin Collins reporting. A growing number of Republicans are worried the president's unsubstantiated claims of mass voting fraud could even scare away GOP voters from voting if they can't make it to the polls come November. The coronavirus pandemic will likely cause a shortage of older poll workers. The U.S. Election Assistance Commission says more than half the nation's poll workers are 60 years or older, or were 60 years or older during the 2016 election. That age group is most at risk for coronavirus and will likely cancel their plans to work at polling locations. Election officials are looking for younger people now to help. Well, coming up after the break, we'll take you to Beirut with the latest information on that devastating explosion. The death toll continues to climb, and we're learning more about the cause. And the judge postpones the hearing for the teen accused of hacking the Twitter accounts of people like Barack Obama and Bill Gates because the hearing itself was hacked. We'll have that full story coming up. And Clorox wipes have been hard to find since the beginning of the pandemic. Of course, demand is up, but there's another reason too. We'll tell you why and when you can expect the shortage to end. That's what coming up as well. We'll head to break though, taking a look from our Rancho Mirage cam. Look at that. Lots of smoke in the distance there. We're tracking the apple fire throughout the evening. We'll have a live update from the command post in Beaumont in just a few minutes. You're watching NBC Palm Springs News at 6. We're continuing to track the apple fire. It scorched tens of thousands of acres and it's burning in some tough terrain. Let's send things over now to Olivia Sandusky. She's live from Beaumont now with the latest on the fire from Command Center. Olivia.
Sarah, fire officials were pretty optimistic today. They told us that their efforts recently were successful in containing at least 30% of the fire. But as we know, they have been working by helicopter, by plane, by fire truck to get to those flames that are up high in the hillside. And that is costly. They tell me today this fire so far has cost $10 million. They project that that total could reach $40 million by the time this fire is fully out. So that was a large discussion today with Congressman Ruiz. He also discussed that if these counties decide to declare a state of emergency, they could receive some federal funding to help fight those flames. Something else interesting that they discussed today, this area hasn't burned for over 50 years, so there is a lot of dry brush up there. But they told us the roots in the ground as the fire moves do remain intact. So they say if there was a large rain to come in the future, the area shouldn't be too prone to landslides. Something interesting, I thought, as well as that area should be able to regrow quickly. They said the chaparral area likes to burn every 25 years or so to stimulate a regrowth. So that's kind of what we're seeing throughout that area. We're reporting live in Beaumont. I'm Olivia Sandusky, NBC Palm Springs.
Almost surreal moment captured during the deadly explosion in Beirut. Yeah, that woman was posing for her bridal photos just as the blast tore through the city of Beirut. More than 125 people are dead, at least 5,000 are injured. Those numbers are expected to grow as search crews dig through rubble. The shockwave traveled faster than the speed of sound and left a crater more than 400 feet wide, larger than a football field in length. At least one American was killed in the explosion. Here's Bill Neely with the latest.
Beirut today is a city of broken glass and of broken lives and of anger and of questions. It's not just the huge death toll, the 5,000 or so injured, the third of a million people whose homes have been damaged or destroyed. It's the question hanging in the air. How on earth was it that 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate could be stored in a warehouse for 6 years in spite of repeated warnings that this was dangerous? The government this morning ordering the house arrest of those officials at the port who were in charge of storage and security pending an official investigation. But people say almost certainly they weren't the people who were ultimately responsible for this, who were making the real decisions. And customs officials are telling Lebanese television that they warned committees, authorities, politicians and judges for years about the dangers of storing such combustible material in a Beirut warehouse, but that nothing was done. They also say that the latest inspection was just 6 months ago and they repeated those warnings. Lebanon's president has vowed again today that those responsible will pay the price, but there's a lot of skepticism in Beirut that years of political corruption would continue through this investigation and that those really responsible for this will not be brought to justice. So anger, but above all in Beirut today, questions. How on earth could this have happened? Bill Neely, NBC News, London.
Meanwhile, in Washington, signs of progress. The White House and congressional Democrats may be nearing a deal on a coronavirus relief bill. Sources say the two sides remain far apart on education funding, but are nearing a compromise to extend enhanced unemployment benefits of $400 a week and a moratorium on evictions, both through the end of the year, plus earmarking $10 billion for the U.S. Postal Service. There's no deal yet, but lawmakers say they hope for a deal by this Friday and a vote by next week. The Census Bureau is shortening its counting operation. Households must now complete the survey by September 30th. The Bureau will stop knocking on doors of households that have not filed or who have not filled out the survey just yet, either by online, paper form, or by phone. The census determines how many representatives each state gets in Congress and how billions of federal funding is spent. Critics say a shortened timeline will lead to miscounts in groups that have historically been undercounted in the census. An alleged hacker's court appearance is called off when the hearing itself is hacked. A Tampa judge suspended the virtual bond hearing for alleged Twitter hacker Graham Clark after it was interrupted by loud music and pornographic images. The 17-year-old is facing 30 charges of electronic and computer fraud for the July 15th hack of several prominent Twitter users, including President Obama, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and Kim Kardashian. An investigation into today's hack is underway. We're taking a live look now from our Agua Caliente casino cam in Rancho Mirage and send things over to NBC Palm Springs Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett, tracking conditions out there. Mike, we can hear it in the studio. It's a little windy out there, but just how windy is it?
It's been a gusty evening. It looks like tonight is going to be the gustiest night of the week, and it's not so bad. Winds are never great when you're fighting a fire, but we're talking about 25, 35 miles an hour max, and those will calm down around 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. I'll show you that coming up in a moment. The winds are associated with an incoming trough. There is a very powerful low pressure system that's parallel with Alaska right now, and it's sending that trough along the California coast. It does a couple things. It picks up that wind, but it's also going to noticeably drop temperatures. You may have already noticed that today, that it wasn't oppressively hot out there, especially in the early morning hours. Well, wait till you see tomorrow morning. I got something great to show you there. The other bit of good news as well is as that continues to make its way closer to Southern California, it's going to push some of that marine layer cloud cover further inland, and that's some fantastic news, unless of course you're driving. If you are heading along 60 or the 215 corridor down towards Paris and Menifee tomorrow, there will be some fairly dense fog there, but moisture up against the base of the mountains is exactly what we need right now. That's the polar opposite of what we normally experience later in the summer when we get those offshore winds that takes all that moisture and drives it off out into the Pacific. So we got that going for us. And the wind, well, just a little bit of a price that's attached to it. Strongest winds looks like they will be in the Banning Pass tonight, especially near Cabazon out towards Desert Hot Springs and Joshua Tree. That's where we expect those gusts to get up to about 25, 30, and even 35 miles an hour in some isolated spots. Everybody that's in the blue here will see those garden variety winds of about 20, 25 miles an hour max. And then the further you go towards Palm Desert, Palm Springs, and Thousand Palms, we'll get you calm by about 10 o'clock tonight. Put future winds into motion here. Again, take any one of these numbers and add 10 to it, and that's where you'll see the gusts. So gusts at Palm Springs International will be around 30 miles an hour at 7 tonight. We're going to see some gusts in the Banning Pass there now towards Cabazon as well. But as I put that into motion, we will continue to see those numbers go down. Again, peaking around 10 o'clock tonight, and then as soon as the atmosphere gets a chance to cool, we'll do everything we can to get those numbers back into single digits in the early morning hours of Thursday. It will become gusty again on Thursday night, but as I mentioned, not as much as we're seeing tonight. Air quality issues, the South Coast Advisory District, I can never say that properly, do have an advisory for the Coachella Valley, but what we've noticed already here is that most of that smoke is staying around the northern and eastern edge of the valley here. So folks out towards Indio are seeing it and smelling it, but it's not as intense as it is right near the base of the pass there in North Palm Springs and out towards Cabazon and Desert Hot Springs. Also getting some reports of ash falling in places like Desert Hot Springs and Thousand Palms as well. If you're a sensitive breather, you know what to do. 105 currently at Palm Springs International. Gusty winds sustained at 18 to 20 right now, with those gusts getting up to about 30 and even 35 tonight. Humidity sitting at about 12%. Okay, here comes the good news. You ready for this? Next 3 days brought to you by Comfort Air. Feature temperatures that will be delightfully below average Thursday and Friday. We're going to start in the low 70s tomorrow, and then we are tracking some gradual warming as we go towards the weekend, but nothing too severe. I got the details and your full forecast minutes away.
Gonna do the two-step, then cowboy boogie.
Microsoft says its CEO is in talks with President Trump about buying TikTok. The president has threatened to ban the Chinese video app from the U.S. amid national security concerns. In a blog post, Microsoft promises a complete security review if it takes over TikTok and vows to keep user data safe. And right after the news that TikTok may be banned in the U.S., Instagram's copycat version of the app is now available. We see you, Mark Zuckerberg. Their short-form video feature is called Reels. Facebook has a habit of copying features from rivals, and Reels is nearly a carbon copy of TikTok. Like TikTok, Reels lets Instagram users make 15-second videos set to music or audio, including special effects. You'll have a tough time finding disinfectant wipes for a while. Clorox says it's ramping up production, but it will be 2021 before supply meets demand. In fact, the company says it may take a full year to meet customer demands. Clorox says the supply chains to make the wipes are totally stressed because the wipes are made of the same material used for masks, medical gowns, and medical wipes. Also, demand for their products have multiplied 6 times during the pandemic. Up next in sports, we have several announcements today about college football. Will we see teams on the field this fall? We'll have those answers when we come back.
Welcome back. Time now for a look at your NBC Palm Springs sports headlines. A major college football announcement tonight. University of Connecticut has canceled their upcoming 2020 football season. They're the first FBS school to announce we're not going to play. Their athletic director said safety challenges created by COVID-19 put players at an unacceptable level of risk. According to the university, the players will remain on scholarship and will continue to be provided with support. Meanwhile, the Big Ten releases their fall football schedule. They become the first power conference to release a schedule. Teams will play 10 conference games over a 12-week period. The season is scheduled to start on September 5th. Now, if the season does happen, the conference championship game will be played in Indianapolis on either December 5th or December 19th. For the rest of the NCAA, the decision on whether fall sports will take place will be up to each division. The Board of Governors has set a deadline of August 21st for each to make their intentions known. All Division III fall sports have already been canceled. If 50% of eligible teams cancel their seasons, then the NCAA will not hold a championship event in that division. And here in the Coachella Valley, it seems that high school football schedules are beginning to be released. Now, here's what you need to know. There will be no fall sports, so games will start after the new year. Palm Desert High School released their schedule today. Their regular season will run from January 8th through March 12th. That's it for sports. After the break, a guy who looks remarkably like me will be back with your weather. Welcome back. Live look for you, courtesy of our 111 Walter Clark cam. There is some camera rock happening. We see a lot of camera rock on our Agua Caliente casino cams, but this one on 111 is getting some movement tonight as well. You're seeing the palm trees. We're going to see some sustained winds that are going to stay in place until around 10 o'clock tonight, and then we should see those sit down. We were taking a look at that earlier. All of that associated with the frontal boundary that's moving in, and that's nothing but good news for us. Here's what it looks like when you zoom way back. I've taken infrared pretty much over all of North America, because that's how far back you have to go to see the center of that low pressure system. There's Alaska, and as that trough continues to sag down towards Southern California, it's going to bring some cooler air our way. It's going to bring some more moist air our way, and it's also going to pick up those winds. So we're seeing those gusty winds tonight. We'll see them again on Thursday, but wait till you see the numbers that come along with them. Isaias is now a post-tropical system and making its way up towards the Atlantic there very slowly now. Still heavy rain falling all the way from Florida up into the Carolinas there, where they're doing their best to clean up after a bit of a drenching and some very gusty gusty winds there over the last 72 hours. Temperatures across North America will show some low 80s in New York, 90 rainy and muggy in Miami, 109 in Phoenix. We're going to be considerably cooler than they will. And we've got some temperatures up and down the west coast that are cooling. Remember, Vancouver and Seattle were in the 80s last week. Well, now they're in the upper 60s, 73 in Portland, 69 in San Francisco. 1 degree above average today, not bad. Team 107 is where we normally are this time of year. 121 is where we were this time last year, so we got that to be thankful for, and 3 degrees below average in the overnights. It's one of the first things you notice when you stepped out today is that it wasn't oppressively hot out there. Current winds are coming in sustained, especially at the airport in the upper teens and lower 20s. Gusts will continue to stay in that 25 to 30 mile an hour range tonight, and as I mentioned, around 10 o'clock is when I expect business to mellow. Winds will be back again on Thursday with the gustiest winds getting up to 30, 35 miles an hour near Cabazon and Desert Hot Springs. Not great news, but again, could be much worse. 105 currently in Palm Springs, 107 in Phoenix, some 60s and 70s along the coast. Thick marine layer keeping them cool today. 83 in the Yucca Valley, 100 in Thousand Palms, 96 in Smoky out towards 29 Palms, and this just in, it's 79 in Banning. Some very efficient cooling tonight puts us in the 70s by 2 a.m. and sets us up beautifully on Thursday. Temperatures only in the low 100s, 103 in Palm Springs, 104 in Indio, 94 in Joshua Tree, and 73 in Big Bear. Your Comfort Air 7-day forecast shows us staying moderate all the way towards the weekend there. We will see some slow warming on Sunday, but we're going to do everything we can to keep those overnights in the 70s.
The apple fire remained active overnight, still burning. It's now at over 27,000 acres and 30% contained. Officials say they're making good progress, though, specifically in the last 24 hours. Today, Congressman Raul Ruiz visited the incident command post for a briefing to discuss funding.
That's why I'm here, is to understand the nuances of a challenge during the pandemic, the potential threats to my constituents through the county, and already 2 or 3 steps ahead, determine where those funding sources will be.
Some of the extra costs due to the pandemic include sanitizing stations and extra tents to keep crews safe. Aircraft are playing a key role in firefighting efforts on the Apple Fire. Part of that air support is being coordinated out of Hemet Ryan Air Attack Base. It takes about 10 minutes for these firefighting aircraft to get to the Apple Fire. It's the terrain and wind that makes it nearly impossible to fight strictly on the ground.
And it's burning in an area that hasn't burned in 100 years, so it's a lot of fuel, and it's going to be very stubborn to fight, very inaccessible for ground troops to get up there, so it's been mostly an air show.
It takes about 3 minutes for an aircraft to be filled with 1,000 gallons of fire retardant. The water fire in Whitewater is now 100% contained after burning 52 acres. But over the weekend, parts of the area were evacuated as the fire spread quickly. One nonprofit that was affected, Guide Dogs of the Desert, they quickly sprang into action and moved all their dogs out of the building.
So we had 20 dogs on campus that we needed to place into homes. And our volunteer puppy raisers assembled at the kennel, as well as our board members and our staff. And we were able to get those dogs out just in a matter of hours.
And the dogs should be back to work next week after the smoke clears. After the break, we have the brighter side of the news, a happy reunion after the devastation of the Apple fire. Stay with us.
Brighter Side of the News is brought to you by Holland RV, located off the I-10 at Washington.
Firefighters rescue a dog from the front lines of the Apple fire. They gave it water and some of their food and delivered it to an animal control officer. The dog was later reunited with its owner, and they say if it hadn't been reunited, that a firefighter was prepared to adopt it. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here at 11.